All right, good morning, my friends. It is Friday, November 17th, 2023. I'm going to go ahead and review yesterday. So, yesterday was, again, just another day, and it seems like every time, and I'm going to actually, let me pull up my 60-minute chart here. It seems like every time we come up into one of these areas of expected resistance, it peters out and we get a lot of chop. And I've mentioned this, I think, 2 or 3 times this week, right? So, we come up right into our first Taos zone, we chop for 2.5 days. Pull back, and then we come up to the next Taos zone, we chop around for 2.5 days. Get our breakout, we came up to our next bullish Taos zone. I mean, I just can't believe this stuff, but it did happen. We came right to our next Taos zone, and literally for 2.5 days now, we've chopped around. There doesn't seem to be enough steam to go ahead and get through this Taos zone to come up to the next target up top that I gave you guys at the beginning of the week there, right? So we're chopping, just like we've seen for multiple days now when we come up into the areas of expected resistance. And so yesterday, I mean, same story. If you look at all the chop from, what was that? Tuesday, and all the chop from Wednesday here, or I'm sorry, all the chop from Wednesday and all the chop from Thursday and then all the chop from the 14th here. You know, we're still basically stuck inside of it. So all of yesterday's price action was right inside of all this chop. So again, it was not necessarily a great directional day to get some 20, 30, 40, 50 point winners. But there were some pretty good little things going on that I want to talk about. So first of all, we talked about seeing all of our bearish signals up from the high of Wednesday. So when we came into the market on Thursday, yesterday, we said there were more signals for the bears off of the high of the week than there were bullish signals from the lows. And we also talked about how we were basically stuck inside of a battle zone. We had a whole bunch of bearish stuff from the high of the day before, but then we actually got some conflicting bullish signals when the market came down and found its low off the overnight low, off our scaffolding, interestingly enough. Right, so the market broke out. It had trouble off our scaffolding here. Tested, pulled back, broke out. Came right to our next scaffolding level here. Tested, broke out. High of the week, 4 or 5 ticks from the next scaffolding. And then when it pulled back yesterday into our overnight session, from yesterday going into yesterday morning, we bounced right off the freaking scaffolding level again, and then bounced off of it again about an hour before the open. I mean, I can't believe this stuff. So yesterday we traded right inside of there, and we said, look, we're in this battle. We got bullish stuff from this scaffolding area. We got bearish stuff from this scaffolding area. We got to see who's going to win out. Are we going to break down through the overnight lows and come down into one of these next areas? Or are they going to recover, get through 50% of the day before, and then come up and test into the highs? Now, we had all of our bearish signals from the high of Wednesday. So I told you there was actually a little bit more weight for the market to push lower. So what happened here yesterday? We came right to 50% of the day before, to the tick, out of the open within the first half hour, and we pushed lower and got a new low for the day. Okay, so I'm not saying that, this works every single time we get the confluence. But when you have more weight on one side, that gives you more confidence we're going to push to that direction. And we did get a lower low yesterday. Let's look at some of the detail here. So the market opened and bounced basically right around the VWAP, right? Held above it. But look what happened. We had all of our bearish stuff from the high of the day before up there. And in the coming out of the open, the market pushed to the tick to 50% of that previous day. And then we started to trend lower. So all of the bearish stuff we were seeing from the high of Wednesday, the high of this week, that should have been your clue right there. If you didn't short 50% of the day before, that should have been your clue that when we failed from it and then came up and tested the scaffolding just a couple ticks away, and then we started to get down below the FMA, and then down through VWAP, that was a pretty clear rejection and basically a continuation of our bearish bias to the downside. So if you didn't short 50% of the previous day, Well, you had a lot of opportunities in here along the way down to get short with, again, right off VWAP there, right off the 200, right off the 200, right off the 200. All morning, you could have been able to short this stuff. Now, you might have got stopped out if you tried to short the second test of VWAP or this test of the 200 here as we were traveling lower. But that's the nature of trading. You got to accept losses so that you can nail that next entry and actually get your winner. So I'm telling you right now, if you didn't short the high of the day, this is another day where the high of the day was our scaffolding level within a tick or two, or 2 or 3 ticks. So if you didn't short that area, you did get plenty of opportunity within the first hour of the open here to do our typical stuff. Short the back end of the VWAP, short the back end of the 200 in the context of this bearish situation. We were failing from 50% the previous day. Textbook clue for the bears. We got down below the VWAP. We got our crossovers on our moving averages. I mean, everything lined up to get short. So if you weren't short yesterday, I don't know what to tell you. I tried to give you a heads up that there was a little bit more weight for the bears, given we had the daily bearish signal from the highs. And then you could have just read the orientation of what was happening. We held below 50%. We got our crossover here. This was the major crossover of the 200 down below VWAP. And once that happened, once that crossover happened, you literally had nearly perfect opportunities to ride the whole thing down. Now, it was a choppy day, so it was a short-lived sell-off. We got a lower low for the day compared to the overnight low and the low of the day before. But then they brought it right back up, right? So as quick as it sold off out of the open, it turned around and came right back to where we opened, right? The market opened right here, and then here's where the market kind of recovered to and chopped around for the rest of the day, right? And then finally it broke out at the end of the day, came right back to 50% of the previous day, right back to the high of the day. So it was pretty choppy. But despite that, in that first hour or two of the open, you should have been able to get short off this stuff. And then from there, like I said, pretty choppy situation, right? We did get parries off the VWAP there for little shorts off of it. But overall, I'm not trying to kind of scrutinize what happened in here. It was just a total chop fest, right? At the end of the day, once it finally did start to break back above and then hold VWAP here, and notice there's our first crossover, and then here's that secondary crossover where finally the 200 got above VWAP, and then the price pulled back and held it to the tick there. Once we started to break out through the hopeful again, maybe that would have been a clue to get long, and if you did, it was very limited risk. You could have got long, maybe captured that little pop at the end of the day, but you would have had to been aggressive and just trusted the FMA or the hopeful as we broke out through it to go ahead and get long and get that final rally at the end of the day. But again, not necessarily anything sexy from halfway through the day onward, but from the open all the way until about 2 hours in, you had an opportunity to basically play the exact bias we talked about. And that's basically the review for yesterday. I'm not wild about the price action. And then in the overnight session, you can see ever since we made the low yesterday on Thursday, we're starting to get kind of this breakout, or at least this probably a false breakout, but we're starting to get this breakout back up through the 50% of yesterday now, back up through 50% of all the chop from yesterday, and a breakout through the high of yesterday. So hopefully, let's go back up to my 60-minute, if I can grab it here, so we can get a little bit more of a bird's eye view of all this. Hopefully, we're breaking out from all this chop from the last couple days, and we're going to go ahead and break out to the upside for the bulls there, right? But we are still trading right inside of all this stuff right now. So let's go ahead and do our pre-market for this morning. We'll move this up. I mean, scrutinizing what happened here last night, we pulled back and held our scaffolding once again. I mean, we're talking about a break of 1 point on the S&P. Okay, so we broke it by a point, maybe a point and a quarter here, right out of the open, out of the Globex open. But we held our scaffolding, popped up. Now we're holding the VWAP and the hopeful and the high the day before. And then hopefully the idea would be that stair step to hold VWAP, come up to that resistance that we failed from at the beginning of, or in the middle of the week here. But as you can see right now, starting to fail right back down. So let's go ahead and do our pre-market for this morning. You can pull up our higher time frames and go ahead and see what we're going to do here coming into the end of the day or the end of the week.